Hey guys, it's John with CheatSheetPros.com. Today we are going to take a look at the NBA cheat sheet tutorial. I'm going to start at the bet tab because that's the one I've had the most questions about. So you can see I've got the ESPN games pulled up from last night. So in a minute I'm going to pull up yesterday's sheet. We're going to run down these games. I'm going to kind of show you some things that jumped out at me. Again, there's only a couple of games, so we want to get some stats and everything built up for these teams before we get a good grasp on it, but it is fun to play with. DFS mainly stayed the same, so I'm going to start at the bet tab and work my way backwards. And let me see here, and I apologize, I'm going to go kind of quick because Monday is my extremely busy day at real life work. So on the tab here, on the cheat sheet, we've got the main, the DVP zone, the grade tab, tiers tab, bet tab, price picks tab. Real quick, prize picks. Here you type in the name, you type in the prize line, and it's going to spit out some different stats and projections. Last year, I manually typed every single one of these players in every day, and it was exhausting. So I don't have the time to do it this year. So I put 3 in here as an example. You put in the prize line, and then it's going to go through, and we'll do a separate video over prize picks, but it shows you per game stats, points, rebounds, assists, what they've done, average last 30 days. I converted it over into price points, and then their daily projection I convert into price points. These players aren't playing today, but this is kind of where it would go. But again, that'll be a different video. So let's start with the bet tab because this is the one that has changed the most. So what I'm going to do, let me go ahead and pull up yesterday's sheet real quick. Let's go ahead and save this. And so let's see, yesterday, 10/24, okay. So I'm going to pull this up. Now, when you load the sheet, it automatically goes out and grabs all the Vegas lines. So I have to click down here and hit stop refresh. Otherwise, it's going to look wacky because it's going to pull today's line into yesterday's games, and it's just going to look goofy. So if you ever want to go back and do some research and look at games, down here, let me see if you can see this. Okay. Right below, so down here, you'll see a thing that pops up, and it says refreshing. Just click that and it'll pop up a box. Click stop refresh and it will stop the update so you can go back and kind of play with it. Each time you open it, it's going to reach out and try to grab that data. So open it once, do it, etc., etc. So real quick, we had 6 games yesterday. Now, given most of these teams here, they've only played 2 games. I think a couple teams might have 3 games. So the efficiency stats are going to be really skewed, so just be careful. Don't go out and wager a bunch of money on these early games. Now, these are the 3 models we're running with this year. So we have our average stats model and then the cheat line model, and this is the one that I'm following. So these are the 2 that I look at the most right now. So I've been betting a few games here and there. I had a couple 2-2 nights, had a 3-1 night, but I'm just doing like half unit games. This is the full cheat line model, and it looks extreme. So I'm keeping this on the sheet because I want to see if, as we get more stats, if things skew that way, or if that is just too extreme to use in NBA and we need to tone it down. So this is kind of the toned down average model that I like a little bit more, and I compare it with this one. So these are the 2 that I'm kind of tracking. So as always, we've got our Vegas information up here, line open, line current, where it moves. Same thing with the total. We got our money, side spread total. I left this open to add more data in the future. Game, we got game time over here. We have our 3 models. We have our range of totals. Last year we had the over-under percentage. So based on our range of totals and where this falls, it just calculates a little percentage. It's kind of fun to look at. This range number will go into a calculation in the future. That's just the difference between our high and low. This is basically just taking a low amount, a low possible number for team efficiency by the low possessions, and then high versus high. So it gives us kind of a range of where we could be at. Sometimes there's a big gap, sometimes there's not. This is back from last year. It's just the last 3 games combined points per game and allowed points per game. So this one you can see it line opened at 221, and they've been averaging and allowing 236 across the last 3 games. It went up to 225, and yeah, that game went over, ended up, if you can see it down here, 121, 118, so about 240, so it went over. So just something to kind of glance at. These are some projected pace numbers, which we'll go over in the future. These are the basic stats down here. I kind of pull them in. These are the ones that I look at the most. It's points per game, defensive points per game allowed, same thing in the efficiency stats, effective possession ratio, offense, defense, the pace and possessions per game, and turnovers per game. I've got another model that I'm kind of looking at that I'm going to play with, and I saved plenty of room up here to kind of move stuff around and squeeze it in. I haven't had time to really dig into the calculations yet. And then over here, we've got our basic stats. You've got your overall record, and then all this stuff is ATS, home, road, last 10, streak, against the spread, home, away, over, under at home, over, under on the road. And then I pulled the stat ranks here that I like to look at, and these are kind of fun. The points per game, offensive efficiency, rebounds a game, turnovers a game, effective field goal percentage, and this is just the rank. So as you can see here, if it's top 8, I made it green. If it's bottom 8, I made it red. So green good, red bad, pretty basic there. So here you can see Memphis was playing really well. They've got a lot of green over here. Points per game allowed, kind of same process. If you do quarters or you break it down, I know some of you guys do price picks per half. So I just put the average points scored first, second, third, fourth quarter, first half, second half. I broke it down into percentage over here. And then percentage for first half, second half. There's a few color code things I'll pick up on. The freaking data provider switched, about 18 names. So like Golden State's not GSW, it's now GS. San Antonio Spurs are not SAS, it's SAN. Phoenix is not PHO, it's PHX. So it wrecked havoc on me. So over here, these are the basic stats that you're looking at. You don't really have to look at these. I would focus on this right here, the two models, and then, look at their ATS stuff, and then look at their ranks, how they're doing, and that should be enough to give you a decision for a game, along with any Vegas movements and the percentage of money. If you do want to know what these are, so a basic model to project NBA stuff is projected efficiency, and that's points per 100 possessions. So league average here is 1.089. So through all of last year, we could say 1.089, or let's just round it up, say 1.09 was the offensive efficiency across the board. So that means for every 100 possessions, the average team would score 109 points. So 1.09 means 109 points per 100 possessions. Now, once you find an efficiency, then you got to find the number of possessions in a game. So down here, our pace breakdown goes into possessions. Well, league average across the board was 102.7. So if you want to get your league average score, you would take 1.09 times 1.027, which is your average possessions, and it would generate a score. However, not every team is equal. Some teams play extremely fast. Some teams play slow. So we split it up here. So these are the teams' offensive and defensive efficiencies for each one. So you can see Memphis is playing at a 1.23, which is really high. And then the Lakers were allowing a 1.07. So if you average these two out, you come up with... Oh, that's not right. There it is. So if you average these two out, you come up with they're going to play about 1.15. It's a basic calculation. Lakers are playing at a 1.0. Memphis is allowing a 1.15 basically because they're playing fast. If you average that out, you get 1.07. And then you take our projected pace, 104, and it gives you a score of about 120 to 232. Now, don't focus so much on this 120 to 232 because there's only 2 games played, and it depends who they played, who was in, who was out. NBA is kind of wacky, but this 232 is kind of what jumps out at me. So if you just take, 115 by 104, 107 by 104, you're going to get around 232 total points. Well, we noticed on this game, it opened at 221, it went to 225, so it moved in our direction a little bit. Well, we can see that the final ended up at 239, so we had it going over. It did go over, so that's something to keep an eye on. This averaging out, it's a basic calculation that could, project us some games. Over here on the cheat line, it was pretty much about the same, but we had it at a little higher pace, so we had it going up to 236, which was a little closer. So I would look at this and say, okay, between our two models, we have 232, 236, opened at 221, went to 225. I could see an over bet there. I had Poker League last night, so I did not bet any NBA games. But also, if you look at it, so Memphis was +5. We had them winning in both models. so you could lean +5. They covered the +5, but they didn't win the game, so that would have been a good one to roll with. And then this is just versus the league average. So you can see Memphis here at 1.23 minus the 1.089. They're playing about 14 points per 100 possessions above league average. Lakers are down 9 points. Same thing with defense. So it just gives you a rough calculation. And that's basically what we're using the cheat line model for. Projected efficiencies. So this is the full projected efficiency, which goes over here. This is the average one, which I think is more close to what we want. That's going to be over here, but you don't really have to even look at these. They're just, typically I black them out. I leave them on there because I know I've got some stat nerds in here like Kyle who like to look at stuff like this. Same thing with pace. This is what the team's possessions are going, season, last 3, average. And then I have this in here just kind of darked out. This is how it is per league average, you know, a difference. And so these are our projected pace. If you use the full, it's going to project it at 109, which seems really high. That puts it at 249. So this average, which is this middle model here, is kind of more what we're looking at. So our pace of 106.3 is kind of what we're using in an average cheat model. So we have our 2 projected efficiencies times this gives us about 236. And at 239, that's not bad. Again, I'm not taking any credit for that because it's only 2 games. But let's do a quick look before we flip over to DFS and look at these other games. So starting up at the top, we had Charlotte and Brooklyn. Let me flip through here. So we had it. So Charlotte was +9 over 233.5. We had Charlotte winning by 7, by 8 with 229 to 234. And you can see here, final was 2. It was under, whatever that is. Charlotte did win. They won by 16. So they won as a 9-point dog. We had them winning. They won. Haha. That's only 2 games. No big deal. Orlando and the Knicks 110-104. I do not think we're going to be right on this one. So we had Knicks by 20. Knicks by 20. They lost by 7. Of course, we didn't get this one. But again, only 2 games of stats. So just kind of be careful. Total fell right on 214. And you can see we had this projected to go way over. Reason is, Knicks started off red hot at 1.12. Orlando was giving up a crap ton of points, so that really skewed their number up to 1.17. Typically, the Knicks don't play that high if you followed them last year, and then their possessions are just astronomical. So it was even higher than this. It was like 120, 121 after the first game, and then they're still at 115.5, so that's going to generate a huge possession, and typically they're around below league average, around 98, 99 possessions. So that's one you got to be careful with. Boston 107-97. Let's see what we had there. And so we had, let's see, Houston winning. Again, skewed stats. Boston started off slow this year. Houston started off hot, so it's going to pull the numbers over towards Houston. So didn't get that one. And then 76ers Thunder. So here, 76ers were -8. We got them winning by 17 in both models. So we had it around 114-97. Final was 115-103. So that was pretty close. That was a good peg on that one, which you can see we expect OKC to be bad. Their numbers are bad, so I don't worry about it being skewed for a game or two. And Philly, that's kind of where they settled in at last year. So there's nothing that's way over league average that I would worry about. Their offense is better than league average. Their defense is better than league average, and vice versa with OKC. So 114-97 in both models. So that tells me that there's not a lot of difference there. As far as the total, what was it? 218, so 215. We had 211, 212. We had an 80-20 over-under with a range of 211 to 230. So wide range there, end up kind of falling just over it, and we were just under it. So not enough I would have done a play, but almost hit the score on that one, so that's good. Sacramento and Golden State. So 119-107 was the final. We had 117-113, so not bad. So the total was 226. We had 230 going under, and the average model, we had it at 222. So you could say 222 to 230 is kind of the range that we would project it. Opened at 231, went to 234. We had it going under, and it slid under at 226. So pretty close. It fell right in the middle of these two models, so not bad. And then the line, Golden State was -3.5. We had them winning by 4 in both models, 113, 109, 117, 113. They end up winning by more than that covering, but again, it's close enough to the spread. I would not have played that. But this is just a rough idea of how to look at the bet tab. So now I'm going to flip over to DFS, and keep in mind we'll have a different model in here. So let me go back to today's sheet. And now we're going to flip over the DFS stuff. So keep in mind, stay tuned. We'll have more stuff on the NBA betting. I have to get more than 2 games before I start, risking a lot of money on it. So going over to the main tab, this one, let me see how far over I can get on the screen. All right, I think that's going to fall about good right there. So this looks real similar to last year. We've got our boom bust percentage that one of our guys wanted in there. GPP algo, we got our projected minutes last 3. Same thing with DK, FanDuel, projections, rough ownership percentage. We got our custom projections over here. Gives you something else to look at. Team total, Vegas spread, Vegas total. This updates in real time every time you open the sheets. And then we come over here, and these are just some recent stats. We got the last 10 game ceiling. 10 game is kind of rough. It could be 9, it could be 8 with days off and 2-day gaps. Sometimes you might get it out of 11 for one guy or 9 for one guy. So just take it with a grain of salt. It's just to give you a rough ceiling of what they've made in the last 10 games. And I use a rolling 10 games. I hate looking at stats where they say, oh, their ceiling is 60 points. Well, we're at game 55, and they scored that the first game of the season when everybody was out. So there's no chance of them ever hitting it again. So a last 10 rolling ceiling will give you something more applicable to look at for GPPs. Last 5 average value, or last 5 average, and then just convert it in value based on their salary. And this is fun. I may blow this out to 15 games. I've got 10. Everybody in the group wanted 10 last year, and they thought 10 was plenty. But it just shows going left to right what they've done in the past games. So you can see this player here, CJ McCollum, did not play yesterday, and then put up 43.3, didn't play, 57.5. And I've color coded these numbers, so if it's 6x their DK salary, it's red. If it's between 5x and 6x, which is good, that's kind of a floor you want to shoot for, it's green. And then this kind of goldish color with a little yellow is 4.5 to 5x. And if it's less than 4.5x, it's blue. So if you scroll down here, you can see blue. Blue means bad. Red is good. Think of red as like hot on fire. So you can see this player, 66.5 and then 22, 21. So shit game, came out on fire. So just an idea to see what they're doing so you don't have to dig in and click in to an optimizer and go back and look at all the game stats. It's just converted for you and color coded, make it easy. This is one of my favorite places to look when I'm looking for players. It's our quick look column. So it's got our projected points, projected minutes, our fantasy point per minute for the year, and usage. But then also this has a quick comparison to their points over the last 5 average, their minutes over the last 5, and their fantasy point per minute over the last 5. And then these change columns are just the differences. So you can see like CJ McCollum, he's typically a 1.04 fantasy point per minute player. Well, so far he's at 1.51. And when it says last 5 games, I think it's getting the 2 games from this year and 3 games from the end of last year. So that should change drastically once they get 5 games under their belt, but it's got him at a 47% increase. So this is going to show you players that are playing better, or in this case, playing worse, 0.9 down to 0.68. So that's someone you kind of want to be weary of. Same thing with projected fantasy points versus their average. The main one is minutes. And so when you're calculating fantasy points, a basic calculation is just fantasy points per minute by projected minutes. So the thing with projected minutes is they're not accurate. So most of the really good DFS players, they do their own minute models on who they think is going to get the minutes. So we've got some different calculations where we'll take their average fantasy point per minute over the last 5 and take it by an average of projected minutes versus last 5 minutes, because you'll see they usually fall somewhere in the middle of here. So like here, 14 to 16, you could safely say they're going to get about 15 minutes. That's fair. But this one, you've got someone who's been playing 37 minutes a game and they're projected at 31. There's a good chance they're going to go over that and fall in that 33, 34. So you'd want to look at the fantasy point per minute production here. So if you take this 1.01 times 31, you give them about 31 and a half points. But if you do 37 times 1.11, that's going to generate a drastically higher value for that player. So I like doing an average of these two and an average of these two to kind of give us a safe projection of where they're going to be at. And then you can go up or down from there. I'm going to come back to this in a minute. And then this is the same as last year. This is just fantasy points per minute, last 5 times projected minutes. So this gives us another calculation. And then compared to their normal, this is going to show you any differences. So if there's a significant difference, increase or decrease on a player, you can find it here. And again, a value column, you can sort by value. Stud index, that's just another column to sort by. It's a mix of, I don't even remember, I made it last year, but whenever I was between a couple of guys, I would go to their stud index numbers if all other items were equal. DVP, again, percentage points to that position. NBA is highly variable because players play different positions. And so when you get into point guard versus shooting guard or power forward versus center, a lot of those overlap. So be careful with DVP. I use it a little bit, but you got to kind of understand a little bit more. And then the minutes are the key to everything. So we have their projected minutes, their minute average last 3, last 5, last 10 games, and then the exact minutes they've played each of the last 5 games. So you can see the average, and then you can see kind of what they've been doing to help you out with the minutes. And this is something new I brought in this year. So we have our custom projections over on the front, but this is something that I had in the background and I never opened it up last year, but it's very basic. I put diamond in there for a player that meets all the quantitative categories. And then we've got core play, tier 2. Those are the main ones. So you want to look at the core. That's kind of where you want to start building your lineups. Find some guys around there. Tier 2 are other guys you can fill in. GPP darts are guys that have good upside, but they're a little risky. Tier 3, that's kind of like a player that didn't quite make our core or tier 2, but they do have some good attributes about them. Low production or just people that just typically have not produced enough yet. Risky value is kind of the same way. So typically what I will do on this when I start building lineups is I'll do core play. We'll leave diamond in there. And I'll just factor it out and say, okay, these are the guys I'm going to look at. Let me pick 2, 3, 4 of these and get a core. These are guys usually that have been playing really well. They have a strong fantasy point per minute. I don't believe I have anything under 0.9. Most of them are going to be over 1. They've got a solid track record of projected minutes, average minutes, so they're the less risky players that are going to be on the floor. They have a decent usage. So these are guys that you can kind of stick with. And when you go over here and look, most of them you see a lot of red. These guys have been doing really well, so it's kind of a core group that we can build around. And then once you get those guys, you can come out here and say, okay, who's my tier 2, tier 3 guys? And then these are going to be some different guys you could dig into for tier 2, tier 3. Let me put those all together. Sorry, my OCD is jumping out. I don't like having them mixed. And you can go over here and look at like the projections. So if I'm looking for a tier 2 guy, I'm looking over here at this average value. I'm going to look up here at these guys projected over 5 first. So these would be kind of the guys I would dig into, look at their projected minutes last 5, and say, okay, who do we like? Who can we mix in? They're going to be guys that have done really well. They've got some upside to them, and, kind of go from there. But again, just something else to kind of help you start building your lineups. There's a lot of information on here to look at. If you don't want to dig through the stats and numbers, just sort this, by core plays and start building around from there. Core plays are good for cash. And again, we've got the boom bust from last year. We got the GPP algo. GPP algo and boom bust is going to be pretty close to the same thing. So several things you can play with. Moving on to the DVP zone. Same thing. We always got a lot of DVP data in here. So these are going to be the team, the opponent. This is going to be the Vegas total, Vegas line. This is the projected pace. So this is kind of the full cheat line pace model, and you can see, is it a pace up or pace down game, total fantasy points allowed by the other team, and then by each position. So this is kind of the main stuff that I look at right here. Now, when you get into prize picks where you're actually looking at rebounds and assists and blocks and steals, then you can get into some of these DVP stats. Again, with 2 games of data, a lot of stuff. 0, 1 doesn't give you a lot of information. And then these are just the ranks. So you can see like Philadelphia is really good versus the point guard. As far as points, rebounds, and assists, they're second, and second hardest. But you can see shooting guard, 30th, 28th, and 30th. So typically you want to find a shooting guard against them and fade the point guard. And these are just the ranks and all of the stats they have on Prize Picks. Same with Prize Pick points. If you convert this over, this is the rankings. So you can see 30th. Right now, the Lakers are giving up the most Prize Pick points to point guards. And then number 1, Houston would be giving up the least amount of Prize Pick points. So if you're doing fantasy points on prizepicks.com, that's one of the things you could look at. And then I've even converted it to an actual number if you don't want the ranking. If the ranking's easiest to look at, but if you want the actual number to see the differences, it's over here. Over the grade tab, I tried to take this off last year and some people wanted it back, so we brought it back and it's on here again this year. Excuse me. It's kind of the same thing that we've had every year. You've got your minutes versus minutes last 5, any changes, same thing. We got our projected values, salary, we got our last 5 average, just color codes 5x, 6x, green or this black and yellow. Last 5 average value, so blue is low, green is high. Again, 2 games, don't worry about it, but we got the ceiling, fantasy points per minute, season versus last 5 to see who's up or down. Since it's a new season, there's no change, everybody's at 0%. Last 10 ceiling, I converted into a fantasy point per minute number. I don't ever use it, but it's in there. DVP, points allowed, I converted that into a fantasy point per minute number. We brought in usage, their primary position that we use for DVP, DK and FanDuel position, eligibility, and then we've got team total, game total, odds, and then we got some custom projections that we're playing with over here. I wouldn't use them here, they're on the main tab. Same thing, our player tiers, they're kind of color coded. We got tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, and then we got things like sleeper, ice cold. Most of them are self-explanatory. So tier 1 core players, kind of who you want to look at. Tier 2 solid player has other stats. Again, these are going to change a lot once you get more games. Right now, there's not a lot to look at there. Tiers tab, same thing as every year. Nothing really changed. I've got the data for the last 10 games played. We got the usage in here. Projected minutes versus minutes last 5. Fantasy points per minute versus FPPM last 5. Algo, ownership, Vegas stats. Pretty straightforward. Bet tab we went over earlier. Prize picks, we kind of went over that. I want to show you a prize pick on here though. So let's say Miles Turner. All right, want to find someone that's playing today. So anywhere up here, you just come in and type in Miles Turner. And be careful if someone's got a name with Junior or the third behind it. You may have to type that in. And you can see it fills it in here and it says, okay, their last 30 average fantasy or prize pick point per minute times projected minutes would put them at 34.3. If you take 70% of their last 30 and 30% of the season average and take it times their minutes versus the last 5, it gives you 33.7. And then just their raw daily projections converted into prize pick points, it'd give you 33. So you could safely say Turner is going to be somewhere in the low 30s. All 3 of these have about the same number. Sometimes they skew a little bit. And it shows you what he averages per game the last 30 days. So 17.7 points, 7 rebounds, 0.3 assists, 2 3-pointers, points, rebound, assists, 25. And then you've got the opponent prize pick points allowed. And then we got this prize pick point per minute number. So you can see on the season, he plays about a 1.18. So basically what I did is I just took your fantasy points per minute and converted it over into price pick point per minute, so it's easier to calculate when you're looking at their data. So on the season, last 30, it's going to be the same, different, and then you'll have a little pop up here, just kind of say steady, on fire, good, bad. That's it. Pretty basic stuff. And so you can put this in here. So say his number was 30, and then it would kick out and it would say, okay, we're going to go over by 4.3, 3.73, so that would be an over. If his number is 55, then it would flip and say, okay, we're going to be under, under, under. So if there's a consensus, all three of these are the same, it'll pop up over or under. So just something to play with. I haven't done any NBA price picks yet, but I know a lot of you guys in the chat have, so I brought that back in there for you guys to kind of play with. I'm still trying to find a way to grab the price pick lines. You can't do it in Excel or scrape it, so if they open it up or I can find a programmer to reach out and grab it through Python, I will do that, but something I am working on. But again, this is what the sheet's going to look like right now for the start of the season. I'm going to go ahead and get this posted with the video, so if you have any questions, let us know. And again, if you're not a premium member, I will post the NBA sheet for free in our Facebook group. The link is in the description of this video. So Thursday is free sheet day, but I don't post football sheets because that's only a once a week sheet. But a daily sheet like baseball or NBA, I usually post those throughout the season. So sorry the video is so long, but good luck and we will talk soon.